live in 3, 2. Hello, everybody, and welcome here to the ALG podcast. I am Frank McCaffrey. Please subscribe. Check us out here. We've got a lot to talk about. I'm joined by ALG President Rick Manning. Rick, you have a lot to tell us about on a topic known as surprise medical billing. This is an issue that's popped up and is not getting a lot of coverage. Why is that?
Well, I think, first of all, it's kind of getting overrun by the coronavirus scare. But surprise medical billing is the entree for socialized medicine. It's been used by the left as a means to try to put socialized medicine into place, at least the first stages of it. What surprise medical billing is it's when somebody gets a medical bill that the insurance company is not paying, and the person who provided the services is saying, I need to get paid. And you don't know as a patient whether or not everybody in the supply chain, everybody provided healthcare services, anesthesiologists and everybody else, whether they're all covered by your insurance company or not, or in network or not. And so afterwards you find out, oh well, this guy wasn't in the network, and as a result the insurer's only not paying them the price, messed up the entire private health insurance system, and have been attacking the private health insurance system ad nauseum for like 40 years. Those same Democrats now have a solution for that, of course, and their solution is one-size-fits-all pricing for medical services across the nation. It doesn't matter if the medical services cost more or less in different locales. It's a one-size-fits-all, so the insurance company can guarantee their profits. As strange as it may seem, the insurers are behind this. The medical providers, however, are sitting there saying, wait a second, the same service doesn't cost the same in New York City as it does in Casper, Wyoming. And as a result, this can create denial of healthcare services to people. We've already seen that occur in California. They tried this system in California for 3 years, and we're seeing the healthcare providers denying service or actually becoming scarce and moving out of state because they can't make a profit on their services based upon the fee they're allowed to charge. So surprise medical billing is something which is a real problem, but the solutions being offered by the Democrats, and quite honestly, people like Senator Lamar Alexander from Tennessee, the one-size-fits-all solution are really a precursor to socialized medicine, where you have a one-size-fits-all pricing system put into place, and then the federal government becomes the payer rather than insurers are the payers, essentially taking away one of the big stumbling blocks, one of the very big roadblocks to imposition of a socialized medicine scheme. So it's bad. The bad deal. The Alexander bill is a bad deal. And what's a better way of approaching it? Just so listeners know, viewers know, a better way to approach it is a way that's been tried in New York State, which is to create a arbitration system where the patient doesn't get the bill, where there's a dispute between the insurer and the provider. It gets taken to an independent arbiter, who then makes a decision as to what the payment should be related to that particular bill. And that puts a level legal playing field in terms of bill payment, and makes it so the patient doesn't get caught in the middle where you're powerless and you're just being told, oh, you've got to pay this bill or we're gonna go after your assets. So the patient while I believe patients should be intimately involved in the costs of healthcare in terms of surprise medical billing, until we get full reform of the healthcare system and a privatization of the healthcare system, the surprise medical billing situation is one fraught with disaster. It leaves the patient in a box. And so then we need to fix that, and the best way to fix it is by doing the New York solution, which is an arbitration system rather than a one-size-fits-all pricing system.
Yeah, Rick, there were people who were against the idea of a private healthcare system in this country. Where are they now, right? Yeah, I'm sure.
The same people who brought us Obamacare, who messed up the whole system, who make it so the taxpayers have to provide support to the health insurers because the pricing systems are so messed up, and their health insurers are forced to provide all sorts of things that they wouldn't otherwise provide, and quite honestly, that their customers don't want. Because we've taken away we basically undercut the entire free enterprise system throughout the healthcare system. We forced our doctors to consolidate into consortiums as opposed to being independent doctors in order to deal with the Obamacare system. We've basically restructured healthcare under Obamacare in a way that is antithetical to both good healthcare and affordable healthcare. And so so we really need to totally restructure healthcare, need to get the federal government out of it as much as possible, create more competition in the marketplace, and allow for, we do want to cross state lines for health savings accounts and the like. But ultimately, we have to re-privatize the healthcare system, because what we have now is we have a camel. And everybody knows the definition of
a camel.
A camel is an animal that looks like it was put together by a committee.
A horse put together by a committee. It's a horse put together by a committee.
Yeah, a horse put together by a committee. So you get down to it. We need a total rethink on healthcare. We need to strip the government out of it, the federal government out of it, while still providing some basic protections that the people want to have, without having the extraordinary limitations that our current system, Obama-driven system, is providing. Surprise medical billing is one of those, and to try to fix it by making government bigger, by trying to fix it by saying, gee whiz, the government's going to solve it by making one-price-fits-all solutions, is essentially saying, we created the problem, now we got a great idea. We're going to create an even bigger problem by driving the health providers out of business.
Okay, Rick, now the markets have been really suffering. I saw that the Dow has fallen pretty significantly in recent days, and this is due to coronavirus panic and coronavirus fears. Is there anything that could really bring it back now?
Well, what'll bring it back is when there's two things. The coronavirus fears, I think, already got baked into the cake. But when the Saudis on Friday were attempting to get the Russians the government of Russia to limit their oil output, and through an OPEC meeting, and the Russians said, no, we're not going to limit our oil output. The Saudis decided that they were going to flood the market with oil and punish Russia, which is very dependent upon oil dollars coming in, is their sole source of capital. And so the Saudis said, well, if you're not going to be helpful, part of the solution, and the Saudis try to control the price of oil and keep the price of oil relatively stable at a certain level so they can depend on certain profits. But they've just said, Russians aren't part of the solution, then we're going to make them part of the problem. And they're now flooding the market with oil. And as a result, the oil prices have dropped oil price per barrel has dropped significantly, 30% drop, basically overnight, over the weekend. And so, while that has some good effects, lower gas prices and the like, it has some real negative effects. And the negative effects are that it is it's another place where it creates it drives certain producers at a disadvantage out of the market, and some of those producers here in the United States. It's cost Saudi Arabia about 25 cents a barrel to pull their oil out of the ground, because it's all old technology, and it's just wells that have already been drilled, and they're just pumping up and down and pulling oil up. Whereas with stuff like hydraulic fracturing, which is a lot of the U.S. production, it costs $30 to $35 a barrel on average to bring for those wells to be profitable. And so Saudi Arabia can pump as much oil as they want out of the ground and flood the market. And Russia, which is much more expensive, their oil production is much more expensive, as is the U.S. oil production, end up getting hit in the pocketbook pretty hard. And so there's some disruption that's going to occur on that, and you combine that with the overall slowing of demand for oil based on the coronavirus fears, and it's kind of a double whammy to the economy. And quite honestly, it could be one of those things that actually does create the exact circumstance that we were hoping to prevent, and that is real panic and real concerns about the global economy as a whole, and trying to keep the global economy and the U.S. economy out of recession. So it's getting to be kind of spicy, but I think the Saudis, if the Saudis are only doing this short term to try to teach the Russians a lesson, that has one effect. But if it's a long-term choice to flood the market with oil, it could have a really serious effect and impact on a lot of the U.S. oil providers as well.
Okay, now the SEC is also something that pops up during times like these. Now you say there's something that you have to address about the SEC today.
Yeah, the Securities Exchange Commission has a regulation which they're considering that would effectively take away from average investors one of the options that they have to mitigate risk, and it's a hedge fund option that has been available on the U.S. markets for years and years. And now the SEC is kind of revamping an Obama-era regulation, and was doing this weeks and months ago, so this is not new. The irony, of course, is the reason people invest in hedge-type funds and hedge activities is to attempt to mitigate risk, upside or downside risk on the market. And so they invest in these kind of funds to kind of make it so if they're have heavy holdings in stock, that they don't have a downside risk, as much of a downside risk if the market goes down, or if they're short on stock, they have a lot less capital in stock. That if there's a big run up, they aren't caught flat-footed on that. These are risky investments. There's no doubt about it. They are hedged investments. They're essentially investments that require they have risk associated with them, but they're a legitimate investment for the type of small investor who can't afford to be into a big hedge fund, but allows them those same kind of options for those investors. What the SEC is attempting to do is they're attempting to put a gigantic test that the investor has to take in order to allow them to be qualified for that investment. And by virtue of that test, they're putting the liability onto the broker that would sell them those instruments. And in putting that liability on the broker, what they will be doing is effectively ending access to those funds for people, for average people. And that's so for the first time, what the SEC will be doing is they will be regulating risk. And the minute the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, attempts to regulate risk in the market, and that's antithetical to the entire market. The market is based on risk and reward. It's the basic principle of the market. And for the SEC to say, oh, we're going to now regulate risk, sets an incredibly dangerous precedent. Yeah. And so the Americans for Limited Government is opposing that regulation, along with people like Americans for Tax Reform, Competitive Enterprise Institute, and others. And it's in about 2 weeks, the public comments will be done, and we'll have public comments in on it. And probably, I'm writing an article right now on it, so it's top of mind. But fact is, with the market volatility today, there's no greater time to talk about having the ability as a small investor to mitigate against risk, and having options available to you to mitigate against risk. Because the stock market goes up and goes down. It's down about 17-18% right now from its high. And tomorrow it could be back up. It's just a matter, but those are variables that you don't control. The variable you can control is how much risk you have in your portfolio, and and this is one of those instruments that allows you to mitigate that risk.
Yeah, I've talked to people over the years who have gotten into options trading, and you want to talk about risky business, that's it, man. You can lose your shirt one day and then end up with the Brooks Brothers shirt and suit coat on the next day. You can really make a lot.
I mean, you have to be cautious with this, but it's but the truth is that they're a viable tool that's available to the public to be able to protect yourself on downside risk. And but you don't want to put all your eggs in that basket. But a small amount of your investments into a basket that protects you against a big down like we just experienced or are experiencing right now is viable, and for it only available to big institutional investors, and is an equally unfair to those of us who don't have that kind of wealth, but would like to have the opportunity to protect the wealth we have by hedging against it.
Yeah, we're kind of fading in and out here. I might have to call this thing off soon because it looks like we're losing our connection.
That's fine.
But
why don't we call out now, Frank? We're going to call. We're just going to end the game right now.
yeah, rain delay
Get
here.
out there and go ahead and subscribe. And this is Rick Manning, Frank McCaffrey. We hope this helps, and go to Americans for Limited Government, getliberty.org to find out more about various things we're doing. I am Rick.
And I'm Frank.
And wherever he is, I think he's over there. He is Frank, and we will be signing off. Take care, folks.
Thanks. Bye.